Hi, in our last videotape, we talked about the three kinds of consulting or the three issues that you deal with in consulting. First is, are you an internal or an external consultant? That is, do you come outside the organization or come from within, hired from within? The second is process or content oriented. So a process consultant is somebody who works a process. A content consultant is somebody who develops expertise. And the third one is action. Are you action oriented or are you information oriented? Well, the kind of consulting project that we're going to do for our clients is external. We are all from outside the organization. The exception might be that some of you might try to do something for your existing employer, which is absolutely fine. The second issue is process versus content, and we are going to be content consultants because we're not going to try to fix any problems. We are actually going to provide information on a particular kind of process. So we're going to pretend to have some expertise on buyer behavior. And the third one is, are we action or informational? And of course, we're informational that way. Well, the next thing I need to talk to you about are the 6 steps to consulting. And these were developed by Peter Block. Peter Block did a course in the 1980s on consulting, and it's still about the best material I've ever seen. And he talks about the 6 processes or steps to consulting. And the first step is the client approach. You're going to be approaching a client. You're going to be thinking of somebody you might be able to consult with. You're going to be looking at your list of contacts in your network and say, who could I work for that way? I do this in the same way. I've never marketed, per se, my consulting services, but there's an addition on my house and a little bit of money in the bank and some college educations that I paid for with consulting work. How did I get this work? Well, usually I got a piece of work, I did good work, and they said, please stay, and by the way, go somewhere else and work there too. We'll help you get somewhere else. What I'm saying there is that I had, for example, 3 or 4 good friends. One of them, my friend Kim-Ming Yo, who worked at Johnson & Johnson. And he brought me into Johnson & Johnson. And then his career moved him to Unilever, and he brought me into Unilever. And then his career moved to Amway Corporation. He brought me into Amway Corporation because I had a good working relationship, and he was an internal HR person, and he brought me in for some specialty issues, and there was a trust relationship there. So if you have those kind of people, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, then you can actually work full-time as a consultant and not have to market yourself. So you approach that client. You say, oh, there's a problem here, and I can help you with that. Or here's some expertise on that. One of the things that I have with my client issues, I never say no. If one of my clients calls up and says, can you help me with this? I never say no. I say, yes, I can help you with that. Or I say, yes, but I know somebody who could better help you. And that's when I make a referral. About half of the time, I end up making a referral because either I don't have enough time to do that, because I'm really a college professor, or I don't really have that kind of expertise. I could probably figure it out, but I really don't have that kind of expertise. So I approach the client, I talk to them, there's a trust relationship. We sort of start figuring on a project, and then they'll say, write a proposal or develop a proposal, and usually within that proposal is a letter. And that's a memo of understanding of some kind. Now, Block calls this second step contracting. And he will, in lots of places, write formal contracts. I never write a contract. I write a memo of understanding that says, essentially, you can fire me at any time for any reason. If you don't want me working in your organization, then I will not work in your organization. I usually ask for 20% of the money up front, and that's not refundable. And then the rest of it is based on my delivering of what they say. And this memo of understanding has a scope of work in it, and the scope of work is extremely important. You're going to have to write a scope of work for your memo of understanding with your client. You're going to have a general description of the problem, and then say, based on that general description of the problem, this is what we will do for you, and this is when we will deliver it by. So the scope of the work says in the next 5 weeks or 7 weeks, we will do research in the following areas. We will report the results of our research and make recommendations by such and such date. It's that simple. That it's really important in real consulting to have that scope of work, because one of the biggest problems in real consulting is knowing when the project is over. I have found it so many times. My clients will say, we'll be working on something, some new information will come up, some new part of the problem that we didn't anticipate will come up. And then pretty soon, I'm putting in days and days of work that I didn't contract to do. And I have to be able to say, look, that's not in our original scope of work. I'm working a lot more than you thought I was going to do. I'm going to need some more money. And so that's real important to protect you. It's real important to protect them. And it's very important to be able to say, I completed this work. See, I completed this work. Here's what we described going in, what it was going to, I was going to do, what it was going to cost. I've completed it. Now pay me. And so that's a real important part of it, that contracting. So the first one is client approach. The second one is contracting. And the third one is doing research. Even if you are not a research-oriented consultant, which you guys are now, you are marketing research consultants, but even if you're not a research-oriented consultant, you're always doing some research, and that's usually problem clarification work. That is, you're trying to figure out exactly what the problem really is. The CEO may have an idea of it. Different division heads may have an idea of it, and as you work your way down into different corners, they may see the problem completely differently. And so being a problem clarifier, as I've talked about before, is an extremely important skill and very important that way. But also there may be lots and lots of research associated with this. Surveys. You may be surveying the population. You may be surveying the clients. And in market research and particularly in consumer behavior research, you're surveying the consumer. You're focusing on the consumer, the person that they say is their client, the person that they say they serve, and you need to tell them something important about that person. We're going to talk really specifically about that next week. And so I want you to think a whole lot about that, because as you're looking for clients, as you're looking for somebody to serve, you need to be able to tell them. Your value add is to tell them something they don't know about their customers so they can better serve that customer. And you do that finally in step 4 by making a recommendation. Your presentations in a few weeks, in 6 short weeks, 7 short weeks, will include recommendations, actionable items, 2 or 3 important things that you can do to to make these things better. And so those need to be data-driven recommendations, but you will make those and give those. And finally, most consultants work towards implementing those recommendations. Now, as students, and mostly because of our time frame, we will do no implementation work whatsoever. And I have had, on several occasions, students do a presentation to a client. I will be at all your presentations, by the way. Students will make a presentation to a client. The client will say, this is wonderful. How will I do this? How do I do this? And somebody will raise their hand and make some suggestions. And then they've said to that student, do you want a summer job? I had one group where 3 of the young men who were presenting formed another team outside of the classroom and made a bid for about $9,000 to do a piece of work to implement the project. And over the next month, each of them pocketed $3,000 into doing this work. So those things happen, but I'm not going to ask you to do that as part of this project. Implementation is an important step, but it's not the step that you will take or we will take in this class. And finally, closure. And one of the things I ask all of my students to do, you will do this when you have your final meeting and presentation with the client, is you will say, we are done. And essentially, we are done because we remember the memo of understanding that we had right at the beginning, and it said we will do this, this, and this. Well, we just did this, we just did this, and we just did this. Those are the 3 things we did. And so we helped you out. We did what we needed to do, and we are done. And usually closure is a really good time to start talking about additional things you can do for that client if you're really doing consulting. Okay, now that we've done that project, is there another project I can help you with? We've sealed that one off. We've finished that one. It's done. Is there something else I can do? And usually the answer is yes. And And so if you've done good work, they want to keep you around and keep you doing other things. So remember, the client approach is the first step. Contracting is the second. Research is the third. Recommendations are sort of the fourth, and this is the report that you will write. Implementation is the fifth, something you will not do. And finally, closure. Those are the steps to consulting by Peter Block, and you should know those. They are also in the quiz that's attached to in the files section. So quiz 1. These are if you know those 8 or those 6 things, then that'll help you answer all the right questions. Thanks, guys.